I'm learning the difference between a garden and a graveyard is only what you choose to put in the ground. You see,
my man, let's go.
once
Rudy Francisco is one of, if not the most prolific spoken word poets in the game. And the question I had, as well as a lot of others when they started coming across him, was how is he doing what he's doing? Like, what is it about his poetry that connects with audiences emotionally, but also impresses them from an intellectual level, right? That's what this reaction is all about. In reality, it's more of an analysis because I tried to do this reaction previously and the footage got messed up. So because I already know it's coming, I'm going to be breaking down each section of the poem and really explain how he's able to wow audiences the way he does, all right? So I hope you learned something. Let's get started.
And the article says the Mexican government confiscates approximately 30,000 illegal firearms per year. When the guns are taken, they get dismantled and the metal is used to make other types of weapons that will later be utilized by their military. In 2012, Pedro Reyes, an artist from Mexico City, convinced his government to donate the guns to him, and he turned them into musical instruments. So somewhere there's a tambourine, a drum set, a guitar, all made out of things that were used to take people's lives, but now they create a sound that puts life back into people's bodies, which is to say a weapon will always be a weapon, but we choose how we fight the war. And from this I learned that even the most destructive instruments can still create a melody worth dancing to, and sometimes don't we also call that a battle? I wonder how long it took to convince the first rifle that it can hold a note instead of a bullet, but still fire into a crowd and make everyone move.
Okay, so let's start picking that apart. There's something I've noticed with a lot of Rudy's poems, and this one does it exceptionally well, where he will introduce a seemingly random fact at the beginning of the poem. The anecdote is talking about how the Mexican government confiscates illegal firearms to use for their own military. Okay, what does that have to do with the heart and the fist, right? But you're kind of along for the ride because he's introducing some new facts to you, okay? We're now talking about this artist who wants to repurpose those firearms in order to make musical instruments. You see what I'm saying? So you're kind of lost, but not confused, right? You're not confused about what he's saying. You're lost in simply understanding where this is going, right? Because it's okay to be mysterious, just don't be vague, right? If you're so vague, no one's gonna know what you're talking about. You don't want that, but you just want to take the listener or the reader through a sort of like roller coaster ride of sorts where they don't know how it's going to end or where it's going to end up. You see what I'm saying? So yeah, go for mystery, not vagueness. With that being said, even the way the very first words of the poem even get you hooked. He said, and the article says, so you're kind of just like hopping right into it, right? He didn't warm himself up in introducing what he was going to talk about. It's almost like you entered the movie theater a few minutes late. Like the movie's already started and you're just kind of hopping right into the action. You see what I'm saying? Really great way of getting the audience's attention, because if they feel like you're warming up to the good part, they're not going to start listening until you get to the good part. But by the time you get to the good part, they're not really going to see all the setup you did to get there, so they're going to be pretty confused. You see what I'm saying? He brought us right in by saying,
and the article says,
and the wordplay was obviously pretty incredible as well. You know, the whole idea of a weapon being able to shoot a note into a crowd and cause everybody to move, right? I mean, yeah, that's pretty clean. I ain't gonna lie to you, bro. That's clean. Let's keep going.
When I was 6, I was taught how to throw a punch. In the 80s, that was the anti-bullying movement. The first time one of my classmates took a yo mama joke a little too far, I remembered my training, so I turned his nose into a fountain. My fist 5 pennies. I closed my eyes. I made a wish. I came home with bloody knuckles, and it was the first piece of artwork my family hung on the fridge. I remember staring at my hands the same way you start a test when all your answers are correct. I didn't know what class this was, but I did know I was passing, and isn't that what masculinity has become? A bunch of dudes afraid of their own feelings, terrified of any emotion other than anger, constantly yelling at the shadows on the wall, but still haven't realized that we're the ones standing in front of the light. We learn how to dodge a jab. We learn how to step in before we swing. We learn the heart is the same size as the fist, but we keep forgetting they don't have the same functions. We keep telling each other to man up when we don't know what the hell that even means. We turn our boys into bayonets. We point them in the wrong direction. We pull their triggers, and then we ignore all the damage they're doing in the distance. The word.
Okay. I'll stop him right there. So once again, he's introducing an anecdote, but this one is a personal one. He went from bringing up random facts about the Mexican government and then the story of an artist who wanted to repurpose those weapons from the Mexican government. He went from that to giving personal details about his childhood and his connection to his masculinity and how he was told masculinity was supposed to be used one way, when in reality, he's beginning to learn now it can be used in another way. He used the fist and the heart to represent that dilemma, right? The heart and the fist are the exact same size, but they have two different functions. You see what I'm saying? Now, he did another thing as well. He also introduced a bit of humor, right? Talking about how in the 80s, the anti-bullying movement was pretty much like learning to fight so you can defend yourself from being bullied, pretty much, you know? The crowd laughs. It kind of gives them a moment of catharsis, right? Because we were talking about something like weapons previously. And so as he's jumping into the next story, he gives them sort of a break from a topic that would normally be seen as hard, right? But after that break, brings us right back into it. So it's kind of like a roller coaster ride he's taking us on. Don't be afraid to introduce some humor into a seemingly complex topic. It's okay to do that. I also like the vulnerability of what he's talking about. He's saying he feels like he accomplished something but doesn't really know what that is after he beats up the person who was bullying him. You see what I'm saying? He even talks about how oftentimes men will be yelling at their shadow, not realizing they're the ones who are producing it. You see, like bro, he's spitting. He's spitting, and a lot of guys can relate to that for sure. I certainly can, you know? All right, let's keep going.
We keep telling each other to man up when we don't know what the hell that even means. We turn our boys into bayonets. We point them in the wrong direction. We pull their triggers, and then we ignore all the damage they're doing in the distance. The word repurpose, it means to take an object and give it amnesia. It means to make something forget what it's been trained to do so you can use it for a better reason. I am learning that this body is not a shotgun. I am learning that this body is not a pistol. I am learning that a man is not defined by what he can destroy. I'm learning that a person who only knows how to fight can only communicate in violence, and that shouldn't be anyone's first language. I'm learning the difference between a garden and a graveyard is only what you choose to put in the ground. You see,
my man, let's go.
Once I came across a picture of a strange looking violin. The caption said that it was made out of a rifle. I thought to myself, but someday that could be me. Thank you.
He killed it. He killed it. Come on. Okay. So my final thoughts on that. He pretty much wrapped everything up and reiterated what he had said before, but in a more unique way, right? Talking about how he does not have to be used as a weapon. Men, yes, they can destroy, but they can also build, right? The heart is supposed to give life to the entire body, even though it's the same size as a fist. Right, so it was pretty loaded, you know. I remember when I first read the poem, it hit me like for real. So if you have not checked out his poetry collection, certainly do so. You know, another thing I want to point out about his performance is the way he delivers. He's not afraid to take pauses to allow the poem to sink into the hearts of the listeners. Right, he doesn't just rush the whole time. Now, don't get me wrong. There are certain periods where he's kind of speaking quickly, but it's not, you can tell it's not because he's rushing, but because he's trying to build momentum, right? He's accelerating to get to a certain point that's gonna hit when he stops, right? If he's accelerating, and then he says a really deep line and then pauses for a couple seconds, it's gonna feel almost like the journey to a car crash. And the moment that crash happens, you're kind of taken aback by it, right? Like, that's really impressive. That's another thing he does in a lot of his poems. So I just wanted to point that out as well. And here's the thing, he's talking about his masculinity and how he was weaponizing it in the wrong way previously because of what he was taught. Yes, he did not decide what he was going to be taught as a child, but he could determine what he was going to do from then onward, right? It legitimately wasn't our fault that we learned bad habits or started mimicking certain things from the adults that we looked up to as children, right? But it's on us as adults to take it upon ourselves to grow. It just is, you know, so really cool there. Anyway, Rudy, if you ever see this, I love you, man. I did meet you in person once. I don't know if you remember this, but back in like, I don't know if it was 2019 or 2020, you came to Houston during Outspoken Bean's poetry event called Pass It On. He would have it at this location called the Winston Contemporary Arts Center. It was like a museum in the hood. You came through with an audience of maybe like 60 people or something like that in this really cramped space. You performed your heart out. I was in the front seat, and I remember on one occasion, you were heading to the bathroom and I was heading out of the bathroom, and we crossed paths. And I shook your hand. I said, man, thank you for everything you do. You were the most humble guy ever. Just like down to earth, bro. So not only me, but everyone you met that night. And I just wanted to let you know that, like, I appreciate you for real. So you probably don't even remember me. That's the crazy thing. I know you know Outspoken Bean, but you probably don't remember me. With that being said, hopefully I'll stick in your head from here on out. We'll see. But yeah, thank you for watching, everybody. And let me know, what else should I react to? Not just from Rudy, but from any spoken word artist for that matter. All right, I'm out. Deuces.